Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another episode of Mind Your Pucking Business with your host, Jeffrey Krentzman.
Thank you, Connor, over there. A little different voice today, and we will get into the reason for that in a little while. Welcome to the Mind Your Pucking Business podcast, coming to you as always from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County, New Jersey. We thank our sponsor, the Bamboozle Project, as always. We appreciate their sponsorship of the show. This is show number 104, Asiento Cuatro. For those of you tuning in on the Spanish dial, we welcome you. You can send your questions at any time to mypbshow@gmail.com. You can DM us on Instagram. However you would like to get us, you can find us, and we try. I promise you, we try to do a good job of answering your questions. And not only do we answer them, we try to do it efficiently as well. So send them in. Keep sending them in, and you will get our opinion. If you do go to the Bamboozle Project, as I mentioned a minute ago, check out all their gear. Make sure you use promo code MYPB. Save yourself not 5, not 10, not 15, not 20, but 25% off your entire order. So that is a significant savings just by typing in those magic 4 letters of MYPB. You can listen to the show at any time on a variety of different platforms. Spotify, iTunes, YouTube would be the 3 that we would recommend. And if you want to see a video feed of the show, and again, we do not have faces for video. We are more of a behind the scenes. So I warn you of that. But if you want to see the video feed, you can do that at any time on YouTube, and you could also stream the replays of the show. And I know that a lot of people seem to be doing that because we've gotten questions, Connor, from people lately where they will be pulling up stuff from like 3 weeks prior. They'll be like, oh, when you mentioned this and you said this about Capo Caco, this or that.
Oh, so, really? Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So Connor is filling in on the right-hand seat here today. We welcome Connor, who's kind of behind the scenes here at Undefeated Media, because our co-host of the show, Dougie Stick's wife, water broke at 3 a.m. So obviously that takes far more priority than this will ever take at Undefeated Media. So he is not with us today. He is at the hospital.
No, we're pulling for him and his wife. He's going to be a dad, first-time dad. We're very excited for him.
We wish him the best of luck, and hopefully all goes well, and I'm sure it will. And next week we will have pictures, hopefully, and a very tired, red in the eyes Dougie Sticks.
Yes,
sure.
Looking forward to that. We'll fix that in post, but he'll be
you guys
be red-eyed.
The behind the scenes team here at Undefeated Media does very good with editing, so that will be their challenge for the next week. Can they make him look like he's fresh and,
Dougie fresh, never frozen? We'll get him looking good.
There we go. So, all right, the NHL All-Star Game over the weekend. I don't want to cover All-Star games. It's not really what we do. And to be honest, as a kid, when growing up, the All-Star Game was really cool. It was a special night. It was a special weekend. Now, I just cannot for the life of me get into the All-Star Game. They changed the format a couple years back. It's now 3-on-3. It's not even a real game. The skills competition, and I appreciate their creativity for some ideas, being that it was in sunny South Florida with some of the skills I just couldn't get into. So I'm going to preface it by saying I didn't really watch it. So I watched maybe 45 minutes of the first game, or the game on Saturday. Didn't really get into it, and I was out. So we're not going to cover the All-Star Game here. You can tune elsewhere if you want coverage of the All-Star weekend down in Sunrise, Florida. But the Rangers returned last night after a 10-day layoff. And one thing you could expect, and Henrik Lundqvist said this on the pregame show last night, and I thought he was spot on, was that you have to expect rust, right? This is going to be a very strange game. The team hasn't played in 10 days. If you follow some players on social media, in particular Instagram, you would see that a lot of players on the Rangers, not only did they not skate in the last week, they were on beaches in Playa del Carmen. They weren't even here. So it's like, you kind of get this break. Right. Team comes back. Team hasn't played. Calgary is flying, 4.5 hours to come here and play. You were not last night going to get the crispest game of hockey that you would expect to get in a normal game, and you certainly didn't get that last night. Now, a couple things with the game last night. I don't want to make too much of one game. We don't do that because there's 82 games on the calendar, so we're not going to sit here and overanalyze one of them. But I saw this morning someone had said it was a game of the year candidate for how exciting it was, and the Rangers come back and then win it in overtime. And it was. If you were lucky enough to have tickets last night to the Garden, in what normally would have been one of the easier tickets to get, right? A Monday night in February, not really an appealing draw. Calgary, a West Coast team coming in. Tickets were affordable last night compared to some other games. You saw a really good game. So congratulations to you. The Rangers come back and win the game 5-4 in overtime. Now, here's what I want to talk about with last night's game. First off, Filipino scores the first 2 goals in the game. Filipino, if you go back and watch certain shows of where I've spoken about Filipino over the last 2.5 years, I have not been the world's biggest Filipino fan. I mean, I just haven't, and I admit that. And now I'm starting to see that maybe I was wrong, because Filipino now in 42 games this year has amassed 31 points in those 42 games. And he's doing it, remember, this is something that needs to be said. He's not doing it playing with Panarin. He's not doing it playing with Kreider or these top guys. He's doing it really on the third line center. So for your third line center to have 31 points in 42 games, I think anyone will sign for that. What we've said here, and we've said this for a long time with this team and where they are as an organization as a whole, is that you're at a point now where you want to see guys like Hedl, Capo Caco, Alexis Lafreniere take leaps in their development. Philip Hedl has certainly shown that this year. We put a debate up, I believe it was a week and a half ago, on our Instagram page for people to vote in a poll and say which player has had the bigger development this year, whether it be Capo Caco or Philip Hedl. And the majority of people said Philip Hedl. And again, I don't want to overanalyze last night, but last night just continues to show that Philip Hedl is taking more of a leap. Now, not a discussion for today, but Philip Hedl's contract is going to be in question as the Rangers, when they need to re-sign him. Remember, if a player is playing well, which Philip Hedl is, and playing over his head, or playing better than maybe some people expected, he's going to command more money in his next contract. And we know the Rangers cap situation, as we talk about it a lot here, is a question. So that will be something to look at. Last night, people went ballistic with Sammy Blais being back in the lineup. I don't love it either. Look, Sammy Blais, whatever, sports opens itself up to debate. A lot of times you cannot debate that trade was good. I understand they needed to remove Pavel Buchnevich, which they did to the Blues. And when they brought back Sammy Blais, myself included, we were excited. Now, we didn't know who Sammy Blais was, but we certainly Googled it and saw some of the stuff written about him, and we were all excited. It just hasn't worked out. The Sammy Blais experiment here just has not worked out. I don't know any other way to say it. I don't know any other way. I don't think I can even sugarcoat it. If I look at Sammy Blais' stats, and this is, I'm pretty sure I am right on this, and this is all you'll need to know, that in Sammy Blais' time here with the New York Rangers, he has amassed, Connor, a whopping 0 goals.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
0.
No. Yes. 0 goals.
Yeah.
So when you look at, and I understand that the trade was made, and I appreciate it. Why don't we bring in Michael's comment there? That last night he played well, and I'm not a huge fan of his play in general. And I agree with you, Mike. I certainly am on your side there. But one thing here that you have to remember, and this is maybe, I don't know, gives me some comfort. Like, they had to move Buchnevich because of the contract situation.
Yeah.
It's just what they brought back was awful. I mean, they might as well just dumped them for a bag of peanuts.
Yeah.
They got nothing back in return. So the Sammy Blais experiment, you have to wonder to yourself, how much longer is it going to be allowed to go on? And I don't think it's going to be that much longer, because as you get into the final 33 games or whatever it is, as you get closer to the playoffs, do you want Sammy Blais in your lineup in the playoffs?
Right. Yeah. What a decision to make, right, guys? 0 goals.
0 goals. Well, I could, again, I was never on the Jimmy Vesey train. He's been better, and I was wrong on Hedl. I get it. However, Sammy Blais, I don't really know how someone can make the argument that he should be in the lineup. I really don't.
I'd like to hear it, because that's a sweet name.
Sammy Blais. Sweet name without a sweet shot. So that's that. So the other thing, another player here we talk about development of a lot, Vitaly Kravtsov. It certainly looks like, and he was scratched again last night, that it's just, he's not going to get the chance here that he would like. I don't want to use the word that he deserves, because I don't know if he deserves the chance. And that's not to say that I don't think he does. I don't know the answer. Vitaly Kravtsov in his career here has played 47 games in a New York Ranger uniform. If I told you in those 47 games he has a whopping 10 points, he averages 1 point every 4.7 games. If I didn't tell you his name was Vitaly Kravtsov, and you didn't have the mindset of
context,
the context of who it was, thank you for taking the words out of my mouth there that I couldn't get. Thank you.
I'm giving you the words. I wasn't taking them.
There you go. You're giving me what I needed help. Thank you, bud.
Sorry.
Great co-host of the year over there today. So, for sure.
Appreciate it. Sorry. Context. If I didn't know who,
so if I didn't know who Vitaly Kravtsov was, and I told you had a player on your roster that was averaging 1 point every 4.7 games, and other teams, as we approach the trade deadline, might be interested in getting him, is that player untouchable? The answer is no. He is not untouchable. I would have told you in the beginning of the year that I thought Vitaly Kravtsov was primed for to have a big year. As a matter of fact, I believe I actually said when we did a season preview show, when we all picked here, when we did that with some guests that day, who's going to have the surprise season? I think I said Vitaly Kravtsov, which means if I did, I think I'm wrong. If we can pull, let me see what that count. So why don't you pull it up? How do we feel about the deadline approaching? Do the Rangers go for the big fish, or do we need something similar to last season? Mike, great question. I don't know if you have our show notes in front of us because you just fed right into the next question. Thank you very much for that. So that's where we're going to go. So what do the Rangers do at the trade deadline? So last year, as Mike mentioned, they got Frank Vetrano and Andrew Kopp, and then also Tyler Mott. And I said this last week with EJ Raddick, that when Vetrano was traded here last week, if any Ranger fan told you they really knew who Frank Vetrano was in Florida, they're lying. We all sat here and Googled and figured out who he was, and it worked. The Rangers cap situation is a little bit worse this year than last year. So they're going to do something. As for big fish, I don't really know what they can do, because here's the problem right now to me. The Rangers can't retain with the cap situation. The Rangers have to give something up. So if you're going to get a big fish back, right, you don't want to give up a piece of your puzzle that is important to getting to the cup or wherever you're trying to go, which is the cup. So I think we're going to see more minor trades like the Vetranos, try and maybe find a way to leverage some draft picks or prospects. Zach Jones, I think, is a guy that's going to be out of here. I've never been a fan of Zach Jones. If a team wants to call and get Zach Jones, they can take him. So I think if the Rangers would trade Zach Jones in a deal and Kravtsov and maybe a pick, a high round pick, I think you can get something back. The key, though, is also you don't want to give up that for a rental. You need to have someone signed more beyond this season, which Andrew Kopp and Frank Vetrano weren't, because Kopp now plays in Detroit and Vetrano's now in Anaheim. So I think it's going to be hard. I think Chris Drury is going to have a harder time at the trade deadline this year because of the cap than he's had in previous years. He also has to keep in mind, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, Philip Hedl has been playing a lot better. So when he's up for a contract, he's going to command more money. You still have the Lafreniere situation. It's a very finicky situation here.
Right. And Lafreniere last night.
Lafreniere. Yes. So let's talk about last night.
Yeah, please.
A little bit more. Lafreniere, I'm wearing today. I'm going to put, if
love this sweatshirt. I was going to bring that up.
So Alexi played the goal song shirt. We like WeBleedBlue.com. That's where the shirt's from. We appreciate them for sending it. And we encourage you to check them out for really awesome Ranger stuff. And they're trying to, we're going to put, it's We Bleed Blue at the beginning, because I see we're going to put that up on the screen.
Yes, we do.
WeBleedBlue.com. Check them out. That's now across the screen. That's where this sweater is from. And we did have a couple people comment last time I wore it. Oh, where's the sweater from? That's where it's from. So we've talked about Alexi Lafreniere more on this program than any player on the Rangers. It isn't even close. Alexi Lafreniere gets so much airtime. What they need to, if he needed a moment like last night to get going, something needs to jumpstart Alexis Lafreniere. And hopefully it's last night. Now, I want to say something, because we were talking about it here in the studio before we bring our guest in a minute. We were talking about this in the studio before. This is not sour grapes, because the Rangers won last night. So I'm not getting on the officiating saying the Rangers lost. I don't ever complain about officiating anyway. But I'm certainly not going to complain about them in a win. There was a goal in the third period. Did you see this, where the kick goal?
Oh, I saw it.
Okay. I want to just say something to the NHL. The NHL, what they do right.
Right into the camera, Jeff.
I don't need to go right into the camera. It's not that serious. What the NHL does right. I love this whole war room setup where a call is made in an arena. The referee doesn't see it, as opposed to years ago where can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So as opposed to years ago where the NHL would review it in the arena, they go to this impartial room in Toronto.
Love it.
Where all these people have no, business being in the arena. They're just looking at the play. They do it right.
Absolutely.
Explain to me
how
this goal last night is not a distinct kicking motion that Calgary scored to tie the game. This was I felt like I was at my son's soccer game watching this with kicking motion, or my daughter's soccer game, or someone's soccer game, because the puck was clearly kicked in. Now, I can understand the referee on the ice who's behind the net is behind Yaroslav Halak last night.
Right.
Calls it a goal. It happens so fast, he doesn't see it. Halak right away says, look, that puck was kicked in. The referee gets it right to go to the war room.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have all these angles in Toronto,
yes,
literally all of them,
yes,
how do you not come to a conclusive decision that is a kicking motion?
How do you tell me that's not a kick when overhead you see overhead shot? It's clearly visible that it's a
soccer kick.
It's a forward kick. You weren't stopping. Oh yeah,
it's a soccer kick. Now again, before you all complain that I'm sour grapes and I'm complaining about the officials, the Rangers won the game, and
right.
I'm not doing that. I'm saying the NHL needs to either correct this rule, because what you don't want to happen is you don't want this to be in any Stanley Cup playoff game, Rangers or not, Rangers mm-hmm. or Devils or whoever, mm-hmm. Vegas, I don't care who it is. You cannot have a goal like this happen in a Stanley Cup playoffs where the guy is literally directing the puck in with his foot.
Yes.
His skate
yes.
in front of the net. Yes. It goes in. It is not touched after the foot before it crosses the line and ruled out a goal. The NHL needs to fix it.
They need to fix it because you cannot have that happen. Clearly, it was a kick. And we were talking about this. Was that penance for the 2 fights and 2 penalties that
Trouba
I
had?
Guess we
can get.
I mean, are we doing that?
I don't think so. Now, the other thing that annoyed me about this replay is sometimes there will be goals that are reviewed and you can't tell if the puck crosses the line and the goalie's blockers over it. So you don't really have conclusive evidence either way, right? In this goal last night, how in the world is that conclusively kicked in the net?
Yes.
I mean, I don't understand what people are talking about.
No one chirped in saying it looked like his leg moved.
Yeah. So why don't you just take that? We'll take one last question before we switch topics, and that is the bottom one. We'll do that. We'll help him like he did with Hedl. He is 6 seasons after his draft. Criticism is high is high in New York. What do you think his future looks like to you guys? Look, with all of these guys, Mike, at some point they need to take the leap that you expect them to do, right? So
mm-hmm.
at some point you need to expect them to develop and have these years mm-hmm. where they're finally taking the leap like Hedl is actually showing this year. And Kakko is to an extent too. Some of these other guys, they now are at a point where, you know what, we can give you a year or two. You can sit here and say with Lafreniere, his first year in the league was his Corona year where they were playing only the division, they didn't have a training camp, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
Now it's different, right? Now, like you're in year 3 or 4 here, you've got to show something. So,
yes.
All right. We're going to switch gears. We are going to go to our guest, and we're going to take an interesting topic here. And we cover all of the NHL here at Mind Your Pucking Business, but we definitely have a much 95% of our focus is on the New York Rangers. Last week, one of the clips went up on Instagram. We'd asked EJ Radick from NHL Network when he was with us last week about the New Jersey Devils because we've gotten a lot of questions about them,
mm-hmm.
right? So I felt like, hey, you know what? We should ask about the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah.
I asked them about the New Jersey Devils. The clip went up on Instagram, and there were so many reactions on it. It was like, well, maybe we should talk about the Devils more. And in fairness, even though I can't stand the Devils, I say that as a disclaimer. I hate the Devils. But if I'm being fair, they deserve the credit. They're having the surprise season of the year. So we're going to bring in, this is Neil Villapiano, and I hope I pronounced that right. That from the
Yes, you did.
You did? Okay, miracle. So we're off to a flying start. That's good. I didn't fail right away. So we're going to bring him in. Devil State of Mind podcast show. I encourage you to check it out. I've seen some of your stuff that you do for the post game, some of your videos after post game. And I'll tell you that what I love about your post game videos is I don't know if you're attending the game, but your emotions are like you just walked out of the arena. You're like me, like you're just like wired up and lit up. So, all right, we thank you for joining us. Let me take some Devils questions, and you can see across if you're following the video feed. That is the Instagram page, and again, we encourage you to check it out. Devil State of Mind. All right, Neil. So over the weekend, let me ask you: were you into the All-Star game or not?
Absolutely not. Actually, on a personal note, I had to deal with some stuff within my family, so I wasn't able to really watch most of the All-Star weekend in general. I did watch a lot of clips and a lot of highlights. Quite frankly, I wasn't really impressed. I talked about this in the last episode that I posted yesterday on Monday morning. That quite frankly, this was one of the most gimmicky All-Star weekends that I had really seen, and I wasn't too impressed. Obviously, from the Devils' perspective, Jack Hughes was just kind of in and out. He had the accuracy shooting. That was that. He played all of about 5 minutes in the All-Star game. Didn't do a whole lot to help the Metropolitan Division try to beat the Atlantic Division in that first game. So overall, not really impressed with the whole All-Star event. And I'm honestly just glad that we're back to the regular season.
So I had led the show, and I know you weren't in the green room yet. Same thing. I didn't even watch it. I don't care for it. I used to actually like it as a kid. Now it's too gimmicky. But the reason I ask you is I found one of the things that stands out about All-Star Weekend happened off the ice, and it includes Jack Hughes. Is Wayne Gretzky was asked the other day, I don't know if you saw this,
yes,
about is there a player in the league right now that you think can be the next Connor McDavid? Now, when I first heard that, before I heard the answer, my thought was there is no player in the league that can be the next Connor McDavid because the guy is in a league of his own. But his answer, of course, was Jack Hughes. Do you agree with that statement?
It's a very tough question because I'm trying to not sound completely biased and trying to give you my honest opinion in that. You made a very good point. Connor McDavid is in a world of his own. He is an unbelievable player. The dude is with 80 plus points already, and we're not even 60 games into the season. He is playing at an unbelievable pace. Jack Hughes shows a lot of flashes similar to Connor McDavid, putting up several points a night, showing the speed, being able to out-hustle and outplay a lot of the guys, and being that impactful player that he is on a game-to-game basis. You look at last night against the Vancouver Canucks against his older brother Quinn Hughes, had 2 goals, had an assist on the game-winning goal in overtime. He's just involved in the play all the time. Even when he's not getting points, he is involved in the play all the time. And the thing about it for Jack Hughes' perspective is that he's playing on a team that has a handful more of guys that are willing to step up. Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Dougie Hamilton, Andre Palat, guys like that. And this is no knock on Connor McDavid, but it really is him and, Leon Draisaitl and to a lesser extent, Zach Hyman that are putting up points. And it's mostly been Connor McDavid doing his damage. And he's just a phenomenal talent in his own right that can just do things that no other player can do. So if you would ask me who is the closest, like they were asking Wayne Gretzky, I would probably say Jack Hughes from an overall talent perspective. But to say that Jack Hughes is going to be the next Connor McDavid, I think is probably not completely true, considering they're just in 2 different leagues, honestly, the way that they play.
So a comment that just came in, we'll pull that up, Connor, right as you were saying, is Jack has played amazing this year. Why don't we just say Jack is creating his own level with a high ceiling to get even better? And that's totally fair. I think, Mike, that's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. And one thing with Jack Hughes, as a Ranger fan, if you remember, in 2019, Jack Hughes was drafted 1, Capo Caco was drafted 2. And people were saying, well, we don't know they're going to be the same player. They're not. And I mean, it is a knock on Capo, but it is also to tell you how good Jack Hughes is, because Jack Hughes has taken a leap this year. We talk about this on the show all the time with the Rangers, that players need to take the leap. When you need to look at an example of what that means for a young player, look at Jack Hughes in the year he's having. All right. So the Devils in the offseason signed Vanacek in goal from Washington. I don't want to pretend that we cover the Devils here a lot, because we don't, but I have said many times over the last 3 years that the Devils issue is always goaltending, right? Until they fix their goaltending, it's always going to be an issue, whether it's Blackwood, whatever's going on with that team. So he's had an amazing year. If I'm the Devils right now, my concern or my question would be, can this guy go the distance and play deep into the spring if they go on a run? Do you think he's capable of doing that?
It's a really good question, because Vanacek has a little bit of experience playing in the playoffs when he was in Washington. And quite frankly, he was just not very good at all when he played in the playoffs. So it's easy to want to say that, no, he won't. But I think because now that he is legitimately the number 1 guy, he has been playing on such a high level. He's won his last 10 games in a row. He's just very, very calm in net. The defense has certainly improved a little bit. Not in recent games, but overall it has certainly improved, a handful with the way that they play in front of him, the confidence that they have in him. And so to answer that question, yes, I think if everything is put together the way that it's been going, I think Vanacek can definitely get on a run and get on a hot streak in the playoffs and make a lot of damage, kind of similar to Jonathan Quick in 2012. Like, everybody knew that Jonathan Quick was pretty good, but in the short time that he had postseason experience, he had not done a whole lot up until 2012. And then he got on a hot streak and really, in some degrees, carried the LA Kings to that Stanley Cup final and ultimately won the Stanley Cup and won the Conn Smythe. I'm not saying that that's exactly what's going to happen with the Devils and Vitek Vanacek, but that's kind of something that I look at when I see the way that Vanacek has played this year. And, you said it yourself, and I've said it several times. The Devils' offense was always there. The defense was improving. It just was goaltending. We needed competent goaltending, and we've gotten that from Vitek Vanacek for the majority of this entire season. And there's no reason for me to believe that it cannot continue. So, yes, I do think that it can continue once you get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and one thing with the Devils as well, and as a Ranger fan, Lindy Ruff ran the defense here back in 2020, and the defense was a complete mess. It was the weakness, and it kind of seemed like addition by subtraction for the Rangers when the Devils went out and signed Lindy Ruff, which was a surprise. I mean, I when you look at the coaches that were on the market that offseason that were available, I don't think Lindy Ruff was the odds-on favorite to get hired. But he's done a great job. And one thing, if I'm a Devil fan that I like, is that I don't want to even say if they get to the playoffs, because now, I mean, it's coming to get to the point where it's almost a foregone conclusion they're going to make it. You've got a guy who went on deep cup runs in Buffalo for many years when he had Hasek and some of those guys up there. He had some good playoff success one year down in Dallas. And Brunette is an underrated, assistant coach. I don't want to even get into him with what happened down in Florida. But, they're coached well. So it's going to be an interesting thing. And as EJ Raddick said last week, he would not want to play the Devils in the playoffs if he was a team because their speed game is killer, right? In the 3 matchups so far this season with the Rangers, the Devils' speed gave the Rangers fits. Now, the Rangers would have a significant advantage in goal. That's not a knock on Vitek Vanacek because he's not even
I understand.
But, I mean, I would not – look, there's no team that you ever sit there and you want to play in the playoffs because you sit there and if you pick someone, they're going to beat you. That's always how it works. Yeah. But I would not want to be playing the Devils in round 1. That's for sure. And it could happen the way if you're looking at the standings. So another question for you. The year Jesper Bratt is having, a very underrated player as a whole in the entire NHL. Off-season, he's going to be a free agent. Is he an unrestricted or a restricted? Do you know?
He will be an RFA. The Devils and Bratt's group agreed on a 1-year deal that would make him a restricted free agent. He could have decided to be a UFA, but he chose to be an RFA.
Okay, so that does help the situation if I'm the Devils.
Yes.
How important is it for Tom Fitzgerald and the front office there in Newark to re-sign Jesper Bratt in the offseason?
It is the number one priority of this team. I know that a lot of people are talking about what the Devils might do at the trade deadline, especially with Timo Meier, and talking about, trying to get him to sign a long-term deal. But, let's get to the deadline and see what happens with that. But Jesper Bratt, very similar to last year. The most important thing the Devils need to lock down. Jesper Bratt is part of this core with Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Dougie Hamilton, Vitek Vanacek. He's part of that core. He has proved that. And the Devils, as I've mentioned before, can sign Bratt to that extension and that deal anytime between now and the offseason. They could do it whenever they feel like it, like they've done in the past with Jack and Nico Hischier. I think that the Devils and Bratt are going to get a deal done because, quite frankly, Bratt doesn't want to go anywhere else. He understands long-term what the Devils have here. He doesn't want to break up what he's got going on. He just wants to be paid like the player that he is. And the Devils just wanted to have another year of, just understanding that Bratt is this type of player now, because a lot of people in last offseason could make the argument that, Bratt was playing in a contract year last year. Is this a fluke? Was he just having a phenomenal year? Well, he's gone out and had an even better year this year. I mean, you look at the way he started the season. He was one of the top goal scorers and point getters in the league for the first month and change of the year. And then obviously he kind of went cold for a while, but he's starting to pick it back up. He's starting to have a lot more success. He scored the game winner in overtime last night in New Jersey against Vancouver. He has really, really played well and really lived up to, all the hype that everybody, including myself, has been giving him over the last couple of years. So I definitely think he deserves to be paid in the same area of Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes. I don't know where, in terms of financially, the Devils see him fitting in. The Devils have a lot of cap space, so I'm not worried about that. It's more of just trying to figure out what type of number that Bratt could be looking for. I think it's going to be between $8.5 million, maybe similar to what Bo Horvat just got from the Islanders type of thing. It's definitely going to be an interesting situation, but I don't think there will be very much drama because, again, like I mentioned, Jesper Bratt wanted to become an RFA. at the end of this season, not a UFA, because he wanted to give the Devils as much time as possible to get this deal done. That's what he wants. He told his agents that he wants to be in New Jersey. His agents have spoken only about the Devils being in New Jersey. They have not spoken about anything else about, oh, we'll see how the season goes, this, that, and the other thing. This is not like the Taylor Hall situation where we're just kind of waiting around and not knowing what the reality is. The reality is that Jesper Bratt is going to get re-signed. He's going to be here. It's like the David Pastrnak situation in Boston. It's just going to take time, and eventually a deal will get done. So he is. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the advantage that the Devils have, which you just said, something that the Rangers don't at the moment, is the cap situation, right? You have a lot more cap space there in New Jersey to get it done. And if I'm him and I'm looking at the future of this team and I'm watching Jack Hughes do what he does, and know Jack Hughes' brother is coming and some other stuff, why would I want to leave here? I mean, you're living in the New York metropolitan area. I mean, but hey, if he wants to come, across the river to the Garden, I'm pretty sure we would welcome him with open arms. Before we let you go, we're going to bring in. We had a live question, Connor. Why don't we pull up the last question and we'll read it for those not following the question for your guest. How do you feel about Severson? I have not been a big fan of him since joining the team. He has played better this season, but I think a trade could be better for the Devils. Would you agree with that or not?
Damon Severson is a very curious case. I wrote an article about him last season, titled The Curious Case of Damon Severson, because 1 minute he could be a top 4 offensive defenseman, really doing a lot of damage and, having a lot of success. The next minute he's shooting the puck into his own net. So there's a lot of times where it's very frustrating. One person that I talked to that made a very good point is that the more ice time that Severson gets, the better that he is. So if you play him like a top 4 or even top 2 defenseman, he's going to actually end up playing a lot better overall in the game. I have had my moments where I just wanted Severson completely off the team. I've had my moments where I really would rather keep him long term. The reality is that it's going to be very difficult for the Devils to feel comfortable bringing him back, not just because of the fact that he would want a long-term deal, but the fact that the Devils have options waiting in the wing. Simone Nemeth, who they drafted last summer, number 2 overall. You have Luke Hughes, and granted he plays on the left side, but still, you have other guys like Riley Walsh in our farm system that could very well become something long-term. And Damon Severson, I'm sure, would like to get maybe one last relatively big payday. There are a lot of teams out there that certainly are interested in him, but I will say this. I don't expect the Devils to trade Damon Severson at this deadline unless they get a deal that they can't refuse, or maybe he's part of a bigger deal that we get, something in return. Like some people said, he could be involved in a Timo Meier trade. It's possible. I think it's unlikely. I think the Devils on the back end don't want to screw anything up, don't want to touch anything. So is it possible the Devils could just lose Severson in the offseason for nothing? Yes. But that is part of the business, and it's a very tough situation. If the Devils were sellers at the deadline, I would say 100% he's getting dealt at the deadline. But because the Devils are in a good position right now, they wouldn't necessarily want to give up a guy that's playing relatively well on your second defensive pairing. So, this has been the season of Severson where I've really enjoyed the way he's played. I haven't really had much complaints. He's played better defensively. He's very reliable offensively, as you lovely Rangers fans saw a couple weeks ago in overtime. But yeah, I mean, he's been solid this year. I personally would like to keep him for the rest of the year and go from there, but we'll see what happens as the deadline gets closer.
Yeah, and you actually, I was about to say something, and then you said it there towards the end, which is that it's a different trade deadline for Tom Fitzgerald and the Devils. Is you're not really sellers right now. You're sitting there, and I think if I'm the Devils and I'm looking at the year that I had, yes, they're young and they're going to have other chances at it. But with the way they've played, it doesn't mean you're mortgaging the future here to go on a cup run in this spring. But if you can add pieces and not really sacrifice the future and increase your chances, why not? I mean, the Devils, you saw that they give the Rangers fits. They could beat them in the playoffs. They've beaten Carolina this year, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right about that? They beat Carolina, right? Yep, I remember watching that game. They've won there. They played Boston tough the 2 games you had at home with them in December. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, why, if I'm the Devils, I might as well take a stab at this thing, right? Every year, you might as well take a stab. I appreciate you joining the show, Neil. Come back and see us again. If we meet in the playoffs, what we'll do, if we're going to meet in round 1, we'll do a preview show. It would be fun. Sure. You can join us that week, but we'll talk Devils playoffs with you as it gets closer. That is Neil Villapiano of Devil's State of Mind. Thank you for joining us, Neil.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That was a really, really cool guest. And we'll pull up Michael's comment there again. That's a good closing. That is Go Rangers. We will see you in the playoffs.
That's great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Neil, for joining us. That was great. Great insight for a Devils team.
Good insight. I am not a Devils expert. I don't ever pretend to be, and I never will be. It's not my favorite team, but I do feel, again, if I'm being impartial and fair,
Yes.
we've got to give them credit where credit is due.
Well,
all right. There is, before we go, and I'm surprised that we've gotten to the 36-minute mark in the show and we haven't talked about something called the Super Bowl.
oh,
that is
yes.
coming up this weekend.
The big game, as
Yes.
people have to refer to it.
Yes. Do you feel now? Do you like football?
I like football. Yeah, I'll get into it, but I don't follow, as much as hockey.
Okay. Well, hey, then you're in the right spot. You've joined the right co-host.
Gotta
chair
explain
for this.
myself.
I don't want to promise you other shows here would be a good fit, but here,
90 hockey, 10%, 10 football.
10 football. Okay. So when football ends, I find this every year with the Super Bowl, just a personal thing, and I don't even know if I've ever said this.
Mhm.
I find that like there's all this hype for the game, and you sit there and you think, what are you eating and all, what are you eating and
Right.
all that stuff, menu and all that stuff. And then it's over. And you're hit with the stark reality that football's gone for 6 months.
Yeah.
It hurts. It stings,
It
right?
does sting.
There's all this build up, and I see executive producer Pat shaking his head over there in the corner.
Yeah.
On my point. Is all this build up to the game, right? We were talking here before about getting wings and all this stuff, and
Right.
And then when it's over, not just is the game over, football is over for months.
True.
And then you kind of wait. You don't really get that into it until April when the draft comes.
Exactly.
Free agency in NFL is not normally crazy, but this year it will be because there'll be quarterbacks on them. There'll be a lot of quarterbacks on
Yeah.
the move. But there's not like there's a I don't want to say depression, but there's like
There's a drop off after
a drop
the game.
off because you will sit there a week from Sunday
Mhm.
and there will be nothing on at 1:00 in the afternoon for you to watch. There'll be nothing on at 4:00. There will not be a Sunday night game. There will not be a Monday night game on.
That's right.
And you're really left with not having anything. So do you have a prediction for the Chiefs and the Eagles?
Oh, it's Chiefs all the way.
Now, are you saying that?
Because I hate the Eagles?
Yes,
Absolutely.
that was what I was getting at.
That's it, man. And that drop off, I mean, it'll be sweeter, less of a sting with that Eagles loss.
I just have a hard time, and I am with you. So if there's one team that I would not in the entire NFL, if there's one team that I would not want to win a Super Bowl, any Super Bowl, it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes.
It isn't even close. I don't like when the Patriots win either.
Right.
But my mindset with them is I've seen it 6 times. I lived in Boston when it happened. So,
and you saw them lose twice.
Right, and I've seen them lose. So I've had the thrill of that.
Yeah.
But I did see the Eagles, but one of those losses or one of the wins came at the expense of the Eagles, if I remember correctly, with Donovan McNabb throwing up on the field.
Oh.
But if I'm going to take an impartial view of this game, right? There he is, Dougie Sticks, tuning in.
That's our man
from the labor room. His wife could be pushing out a baby right now, and this guy's tuning in.
Yeah.
I mean,
Does she have a comment, Doug?
I mean, if this man hasn't just won Employee of the Year at Undefeated Media for 2023, I don't know who has. To me, the Eagles, and it pains me to say this, have been the best team really all year.
Yeah, it's hard.
And the Chiefs, Mahomes had a high ankle sprain not that long ago.
Yeah.
Kelsey's back has been bothering him. Their defense is not overly impressive. The Eagles have a ton of weapons. They're better in the run game than people think. It's hard for me to think that on Sunday night I'm not going to be annoyed that the Eagles win.
Well, Mahomes is the man. He is playing with that ankle, and he just seems like a good dude too. He does a lot of charity work.
One of our listeners knows what's going to happen. If you want to type in put in the comment right there.
Yeah, throw it up. Pat.
Michael says, we saw the leaked script, 37-34 Eagles, but go Chiefs. So you know what? 37-34
script
would be a good game. And it would be in line with the Vegas line.
Yes.
Because the line in Vegas is Eagles -1.5. So it's Vegas is telling you it's going to be a good game.
Well, it's regardless, say the Eagles win, I do not want to see the Empire State Building green.
No, that's all Dougie Sticks need. Don't get him started because we'll get a paragraph here.
Sorry, man.
Do you wish for the Eagles? So here's what I do. Maybe this is rude.
No.
Not only do I wish for the Eagles to lose, I don't want them to lose 49-3.
Right.
I want them to lose where their winning field goal hits the crossbar and comes. I want them to lose in the most excruciating annoyance fashion.
Oh.
Like, you know what would be the perfect script?
What?
The Seattle Seahawks New England Patriots Super Bowl where they threw the interception on the 1 yard line. Like, all you have to do is run it with Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
And you have Bart Scott or whoever their running back is.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Jalen Hurts drops back to throw it to Devonta Smith or A.J. Brown, and it's picked off at the 1 as time expired.
Oh,
I mean, that would be to me,
yeah,
like the greatest Super Bowl.
Absolutely. I would love that more than the Giants winning. Is that like, no, you should have given it to Marshawn and you just get.
True story with that game. I was in that Marshawn game years ago. Well, obviously it was on a Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Because every Super Bowl was on a Sunday.
Right.
That Monday I was traveling for work. I don't remember where I was going.
Okay.
But I had a connection from somewhere. And I think it was in Chicago.
Oh.
And there were, herds of like Seattle Seahawks fans, changing flights. Miserable, man. These people look like you didn't want to go within 30 feet of them.
Yeah.
Because they look like if you came anywhere near them, they're going to just knock your teeth out.
I got to go on a flight with these people. Like, this is, they are so depressed.
Well, wherever you're going to watch the game this weekend, let's hope it's a good game and let's hope it's a crushing loss for the Eagles. Like Jalen Hurts fumbles walking into the end zone on the 1 yard line and it goes out of bounds and it's ruled a touchback. Pat over here, who hates the Eagles more than anyone.
Yes.
This is all he wants.
This is all Pat wants.
He doesn't really care about the Tito's wings that he's going to get from this place in Ridgewood, which is near the studio. Yeah. Or this pizza place he told me he likes, which is a good spot.
Right.
He cares, but all he really cares, he'll give up the good wings and the good food because all he wants is the Eagles to lose. And he's walking over here, so you know he's going to add something.
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
I just need every Eagles fan to know I am rooting for the bane of your existence, which is what I want. 37-37 tied. You're in overtime for some reason. Jalen Hurts falls back. Not only does he fumble it, but he also, 10 linemen fall on top of him. You see the ball rolling, and you just see somehow Travis Kelce take it from his brother because he's playing defense for some reason, pummels him, and then we see a 99-yard touchdown as he throws it into the Arizona crowd.
There we go.
Wow, and Pat went to school in Philly too, so
yes, Pat has a little bit of Philadelphia hatred. Kind of like
those reunions would be great, Pat.
They will be fun. Go to the St. Joe's reunion in a couple of years.
Yeah,
you'll see if you're really loved down there.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, you may want to wear like some bulletproof vest or something.
Pat's gonna show up in padding.
Yes, he's gonna show up in a helmet.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like for me. I went to school in Boston, right? So I always never liked the Boston sports teams, but going and living there was
that's a college town. I mean, sports are huge in Boston, so it must be exciting.
Was a good time. Yep, long time ago.
Yeah, but we got those two Eli, twice. So Brady, have fun in retirement, but we got you.
We got him. Well, enjoy the big game next week. We thank Neil Villapiano, Devil State of Mind podcast, for joining us. We'll have him back at some point, and we will cover the Devils with the Rangers. They continue a homestand. They'll be home tomorrow night versus the lowly Vancouver Canucks, and then home on Friday night versus the surprising Seattle Kraken, which should be a good game. I would expect you will see Igor Shesterkin in both of them before the Rangers start a road trip. Connor, we thank you for filling in. You did a lovely job as co-host today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, anytime, Doug wants to pop out another baby, if you're on standby, we could use you.
That would be great.
That would be great. And again, check out the Bamboozle Project. Use promo code MYPB. Save yourself a whopping 25%. And enjoy the game, everyone, the Super Bowl. And we will talk to you next week.